EdTech Sandwich, yummy!
Hey, EdTech Sandwich coming back to you live from KySTE 2013. Right over there you got Mr. Brett Foster.
And across the way, the round-the-way guy, Marty Park.
And we have special episode number 2 with a great panel of leaders in the education space and education technology. Right to my left, I have the one and only Mr. Jamie Lassman from the Lexington School, Director of Instructional Technology. Jamie, how you doing today?
Great, fantastic.
Thank you. Brett, who you have?
Not only is there one graduate of Grayson County High School with us here today, and being myself, but a fellow Grayson County High School graduate, and Mr. Greg French.
Go Cougars.
Go Cougars.
Go Cougars.
Orange and blue, baby.
That's
The Chief Information Officer for Woodford County Schools, and probably best known for Mr. One-to-One.
That's right. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
And in the middle, we have the man, the myth, the legend, Jody.
2 points. Oh,
Wow, I definitely can't live up to that intro.
From the Kentucky Department of Education, Office of
Knowledge, Information, and Data Services,
Thank
Office
you,
of
sir.
Kids.
Whew,
that's a lot.
that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a mouthful.
Good. Well, hey, we want to get right in and start grilling you guys and pulling out your knowledge. And so first question we have for you is around blended learning. So there's the idea of what that means to you, but then also what technologies are involved in that to you. I'm going to start with Greg, and we'll just work right on down the line here.
Well, I know we've really been pushing the blended idea, especially at our elementary schools right now, where we're trying, our labs are being used for assessment so much that we're trying to take the technology into the classroom rather than taking the kids to the technology. And that's kind of been a slow fade for us, but this year we pushed 5 iPads into every room, every elementary school classroom in our district. And then we already had 2 to 3 of our older PCs in there, and we're kind of exploring the virtual desktop idea, see if we can't find a way to even push more technology into the classroom in terms of actual computing power for the student to be able to access information.
So
that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah. So the moves you're making, you're providing opportunity for students to learn from the machine, from a program or from whatever blended, right. So they're offline or they're away from teacher and
That's
then
right.
coming back. Yeah.
And it's taken on its own kind of persona at every school, because at one school where they have 5 iPads, some of the teachers work in groups and they'll pull all, let's say there's 4 5th grade teachers, they'll pull together and all 20 will be in one class one day. Or in one school they actually assign the student, it's their day with the iPad.
Oh, wow.
And like they have their instructions set up that way, and that's went over really well. It was surprising to me. I hadn't thought of that. In fact, our superintendent's child, she loves her iPad day. That's the day where everything she does on the iPad for the whole day of the classroom iPad.
And she's getting content, she's also making stuff.
That's right.
Yeah.
The creation piece is what we're really going for. And the remediation, the RTI, there's a lot of pressure on our educators right now to accelerate student growth, especially in the kids who are behind. And I think the technology is really the ticket to do that.
Right on. Jody, we got.
Well, I'm just you bring up blended learning, and I just think my mind went a different direction. I'm thinking about homebound situations, kids learning from home, and Greg mentions the example of more devices in the classroom, and taking kids and maybe being on different tasks at different times. Right. So depending on how you want to define blended learning, there's really so many ways you can take that conversation. It's exciting, right? So what does it require? Obviously, you can do it with a tablet. I think about from recording instruction, video, anything with the webcam and recording capabilities to go back and let somebody replay something after the fact. It doesn't require a lot, and I think maybe that's why we're starting to see, as those devices and those price points get lower, we're starting to really see some things, some people willing to experiment with it. They're a little more familiar with the technology, and however you want to do it, you can call it flipped classroom, call it blended learning, all these different buzzwords that we use, but the opportunities are there.
Yeah.
And it's neat to hear these stories where you, as he said, you roll it in the school, and the way you thought they were going to use it may not necessarily be the way they're using it, right? But that's okay.
Yep.
And it's just exciting times when it comes to that.
So we've seen anywhere from 4 to a dozen different classified models of what blended learning can look like. And there's multiple right answers.
Right.
Jamie, what about you at the Lexington School?
We've done some teacher training on blended learning and having teachers go through a course online where the teachers are using a program called Haiku to interact with other teachers from around the country and be part of the blended learning classroom. So so instead of just teaching them about it, they're experiencing it. And we've seen some changes in the classroom where we're starting to see some flipped learning models where teachers are creating content either with just a regular camera uploading to YouTube, or a lot of teachers are using iPads, whether it's like a interactive whiteboard program or
like Explain Everything.
Right, and Docere has been great.
Yep.
One cool thing we did, our physics teacher liked it so much, he started putting it into his classroom. He had the kids start creating content with Docere. So we were walking around talking to kids, and one of his kids said, well, it's actually like a flipped classroom because I'm creating the content, and then next year's class gets to watch it.
A flipped.
That's right.
Triple Lindy.
Well,
Nice.
played. Yeah. Greg, what do you got? Or Brett, what do you got? Yeah.
We've been talking about all these different things with blended learning, different definitions, different models, and different examples. One of the things that we have to do as technology leaders is our vision has to be cast far ahead in the future. We can't just be thinking about right now, and that's all we think about.
Right.
I'm kind of interested in knowing what are some technologies that maybe aren't ready for prime time yet, but are on your radar, and over the next year, maybe 2 years, are things that you see are going to really have a significant impact in educational technology. And Jody, we'll start with you here in the middle.
Well, you start back predicting technology. I think that's difficult to do because 4 years ago we would all said that the tablet's a dying platform, and now it's everywhere you look around, right? I'm thinking of trends, and I had an administrator ask me not too long ago, do you think we'll see a time where there's a $100 tablet, which of course there already is, right? So I think as not necessarily technology leaders, but as leaders in general, you still have people eyeing this price point, right? And so to me, I think one of the trends we may see, things that are on the radar, not necessarily a piece of technology, as those price points get lower, I think districts are faced with a decision, because some people may take the Woodford County approach and say, well, we reach a certain price point, we can buy this thing for all of our students. And others may say, well, wow, if it gets at this price point, I'll just let the parents provide that, right? And so, again, not there's a wrong answer, but I think it's going to force districts to make that decision and it not be about we can't do it because of the funding. Right. Because really, as these price points get lower, even though the economy's terrible, it's not a money issue anymore.
Right.
Do you want to do this? Right?
I often say that to a lot of people in our district. It's not about it's not a money issue. It's a value issue, and it's it's what you value as a family. Families that struggle right now in lots of areas oftentimes value the students' individual learning device, and they will save and work hard to get that. So I agree. I don't think it's a value. It's not a question about money. It's a question about values. Greg.
I was going to say on that previous panel you all had, I think.
Did you watch that show?
Yeah, I was saying.
Best show?
Awesome show.
Ever?
But I think they were alluding to, they were referencing, how much money you spend in other areas. And I think we do that a lot as leaders. Is like, you're spending more money on buses than you do on technology. You're spending more money on X, Y, and Z. You can make the list and it'll go on and on. And on actual hardware, we spend very little money on technology. Yet it's the backbone. If we go down, we hear about it. If they're,
Yeah.
So I think that's a key piece to kind of reference what Jody's talking about.
So on your radar is
on our radar, really, we're looking at two different things. One of them is kind of the virtual desktop idea. We're excited about that in terms of the price point. What can we? Because we look at what the students are actually using kind of the desktop idea for. And what they're using it for, we probably don't need this powerful machines is what we put in some of the labs. And then make the labs appropriate when we need those powerful machines. We're waiting on, will it work with assessment?
Right.
Because that's one area, especially the labs, where it's got to work with the different types of assessments. And the other thing we're excited about is related to assessments as well, is we're seeing some kind of, where we do have a one-to-one at our high school, we're seeing some kind of push through with them trying, ACT and some of these companies trying to leverage ways to test on the iPad. The iPad came out with that iOS guided access. And if you manage those, if you supervise them in the Apple ecosystem, you're able to lock students on an app, and that's really what companies like ACT want. And so we're hoping that that will be
They need that for their high fidelity.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that'll be key on the Android side, because they'll be able to structure something exactly the same way, a browser that can be locked, something that can be locked, so that you have that market share there.
How about this?
That's important for us,
How
I mean.
about this for on the radar? And we know it's there. I think the emphasis is growing. Is the growing importance of absolute, reliable, adequate wireless coverage. Right.
That's what you were getting to.
I mean, because all these devices that we talk about, tablets and smartphones, it's all Wi-Fi based, right?
Yeah, but it's also bandwidth. I
Yep.
mean, I was talking about my
Exactly.
elementary schools, how I'm trying to push the technology in. We took our graduating seniors' iPads, and we pushed those all into our elementary. Okay, and then some of them bought more on top of that to get to 5 in every classroom. But we want to do BYOD with the rest of our school district. But bandwidth-wise, we 4 years ago had asked for more bandwidth to do a one-to-one. We'd have to hold our hand out for even more bandwidth.
Yep.
And so it'll be interesting to see how that structure changes at the state level, whether we have an opportunity to get more or cost share.
Right.
Because I feel like if we want to do something innovative and we want more bandwidth, if it's just a matter of the monetary piece, we need to not let that hold us back. The bandwidth can't hold us back from doing something innovative in the classroom.
I say amen to that. I mean, that's.
I think it'll be
It's a huge
interesting to see how that changes in the future, because
Yep.
I would already be pushing it if I had the bandwidth there.
But I think the danger, and this is, I mean, that's absolutely right. To me, the way at least our state network's structured, you can pretty easily tell when you don't have enough bandwidth. But I do think sometimes the cautionary part for your superintendents and other instructional leaders is they see a Wi-Fi signal and think, we have wireless.
Oh, sure.
And maybe you put a few access points here and there,
Sure.
and they get a connection, say, we have wireless. When in fact, as we all know, you start rolling multiple devices in every classroom, and they all try to do something productive at the same time, and your signal takes a quick
Well, I know
downhill
that-
slide.
Speaking to that, I mean, and Brett, you probably see this where people come in and see your BYOD, or they come in and see a one-to-one, and we really invested in our infrastructure, and they start talking about what they did at their district, and maybe they invested in this really nice access points, but the switching technology in the closet's old, and
Right.
you got to find these limiting reactants there that are causing.
You got to work down the chain.
Yeah, I mean,
and
where's
find-
the
Have you all had
problem
the
at?
same battles, Jamie?
We're right in the middle of that.
Yeah.
I don't think we right now have the infrastructure to handle a one-to-one environment, which I think a lot of us want to have, but we couldn't do that right now.
So the Lexington School is not a.
We don't receive any public funding, so
Right.
nothing from the state, nothing from the federal government.
Right.
It's all funded by parents.
So take that a little bit more. I know you said you're facing that, but specifically on your needs.
So if we started to say to all our parents, starting tomorrow, you can bring in your own devices. Everyone can bring in even if we named it, you can bring in this. We don't have the network right now where we can provide bandwidth to all the kids. Even if we limit it to just 3 of the grade levels, we don't think we could do it. We think it could crush us.
And in a private institution, what are the hurdles that you face in that area that may be a little bit different than that us in the K-12 environment, the state environment, might face?
So I recently learned about E-rate, which has nothing to do with us.
Right.
So I think a lot of schools in our region are able to use their any funds they spend on communications, they really get a piece of that back from the federal government. Whereas anything we spend is money
Spent.
it's gone. We have no chance of getting that back or any kind of
So your cost of doing business is totally different.
right.
So when it comes to technology, you find yourself have to pick and choose where you want to really be creative and or productive and
Not
innovative.
much room for failure is what.
Yeah.
Right. And so far, our solution has been to avoid those one-to-one situations because it costs a whole lot in terms of the actual hardware, and then it means a whole lot in terms of teacher training and changing your classrooms out. But if you provide the technology in the lab or in wireless carts, we've been able to get those changes in place without necessarily making that huge investment, which doesn't necessarily mean it's going to pay off in any kind of return.
You can kind of manage your risk that way in terms of bandwidth, so to speak. So you're.
And that's the thing we always face in this environment is everything we do is a depreciating asset.
Yep.
But what we're investing in is the students. I mean, that's one of the things I always talk about is you want to list all the other depreciating assets that we have.
Yep.
The students aren't. They're appreciating assets, and let's spend our money there. Let's make sure we give them the best education we can, the opportunities, prepare them for the job market they're going into.
And I think that's one of the things I like most about the way you approached your one-to-one. you didn't approach it from an assessment aspect.
No.
You didn't approach it from that we're going to get this in return from this investment.
That's right.
What explain a little bit what your all's philosophy was in moving into that.
Our philosophy was all about what's going to be the best device for the students to be able to be engaged in the classroom, to be able to use formative assessment by the teachers, to be able to gather data on the students quickly and efficiently to give them internet access in the classroom. The kind of that assessment piece, do we want to buy the device for the assessments we're going to do a couple times a year, or the assessment in the class every day?
Right.
And I think that's the same thing with the BYOD piece. So we really focused on the instructional initiative in the classroom. What's it going to look like? The device really is irrelevant.
Right.
I will say there's a benefit to having everybody has the same device because the teacher can rely on it. That's really the biggest benefit of a one-to-one where you provide the device. Otherwise, the sky's the limit no matter what kind of device you have if it's internet connectable, because all the resources are web-based.
And I think that's key. That was kind of, I asked that question to lead into the next question, that, we're talking about, you made that decision because you wanted to, based upon, you wanted to provide students an experience that was a learning experience that was.
Now, I love to talk about, I love to talk with people about the experience that you are designing for your learners, and what should that look like, and how does that, and I know all of you up here have a different perspective on that. Jamie, what's that learning experience that you want your students to?
Well, I think so far we want to make sure that, we heard this in the first session, that students...
Did you see the show too?
I did watch it, was great. We want to make sure that students are creating content. And I think that's really a big shift. When you start to think about what can technology do for our kids, we can create content at a whole different level when you start adding in technology. So, in terms of how the space looks, in terms of how the actual learning environment looks, we're gonna see a lot less focus on content from the instruction side. We're going to see a lot more focus on, creation from the student side.
Jody?
Well, I hope it gets to that, right? I mean, I do think maybe I'm a little jaded. At times, you get in the wrong meeting with the wrong people, and they want to talk about, test scores and where we stand, and did I cover, did I check all the boxes when it comes to maybe the Common Core standards. Not that those are bad, but if your focus is there, and you're not thinking forward to that, what should the learning experience look like, right? I mean, I wonder sometimes if we're asking often enough, what is it that I want to see occurring in terms of the students learning out there in the classroom, the experiences, as you keep keying on that word, and I think that's sort of spot on. But from an IT perspective, you can't do any of that adequate infrastructure, which I feel for Jamie's situation. I mean, you're kind of limited in some of the things you can do without having a pretty robust infrastructure. Because what we like to say is that we're going to provide this basic infrastructure and then leave that imagination to the instructional leaders, and we as technologies, we're going to support whatever you want to do instruction. That's what we tell ourselves, and you really you got one hand tied behind your back when you're trying to do that without starting with the adequate wireless and wired network that you need, the adequate bandwidth that you need on that, and, never mind the devices that you may have to refresh or bring in and to try to provide enough of whatever pieces and parts you want for that. So it's a challenge, but
can I add in?
Absolutely.
We're not sad at all about the situation we have. Like I don't want anyone thinking poor the Lexington school. We're doing fine. The kids have great access to technology, but one thing we don't do is we don't just release it into the classroom and say, go experiment, figure something out, and because there's no telling what's going to come of that. There's no telling what the return's going to be in terms of learning and how it's going to. We know it's going to change things, and we know it's going to eat up cost and bandwidth. But will it really change? Will it change learning in a positive way?
Do you feel like because your funding model is different that you have to approach it a little differently in terms of the questions you ask, or does it still start with the learning experience?
I think it absolutely starts with the learning experience.
Okay.
But obviously we're having this discussions. Is this right for us? Does it fit? And there are times when we don't even get to that point because we say, we don't want kids to have a device all day, every day. So there are times that is the reason the discussion stops.
Right.
But then there are some times that we kind of say, if that weren't the issue, let's talk about the next step. And we don't think we're there right now. Will that change in 6 months? Probably. But right now we don't think we're there.
Greg, what about your learning experiences that you're are you right where you
want to push? No, we're not right where we want to be. We're wanting to push the envelope really. It really is about changing your teachers' attitudes. We have great teachers. I can use an example of kind of inline editing with like Google Docs or things like that. We're pushing a lot of our teachers to let the kids submit their assignments that way so they can do inline editing, commenting, and we have some teachers who take off with it. And you have other that, what's wrong with me writing on the piece of paper?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a slow fade on that change. But what we've tried to do is say, let's put it as much as possible in the medium the students use. If the way they communicate all the time is digitally, these kids are connected from the time they leave home with their parents even to the time they get back. Every bit of information they consume is on a digital device. And when it comes time to write the paper or it comes time to submit something, if it's possible to do it digitally in a medium that they like,
Why go back to analog at that point?
Let's give them that opportunity. That doesn't mean you can't mix it.
Right.
But let's give them that opportunity to create and to be able to do that. And we're also really looking at the opportunities we give our kids to actually design high-end applications. That's the spot where I really don't feel like
That's a learning experience.
we're making them great end users.
Yeah.
Like, you go to a student where it's BYOD and you're letting them bring in, the teachers are embracing it, or you go to school where it's one-to-one, maybe the school's providing the technology. They become great end users.
We
they
can
produce
consume a lot of content.
consume. They're digitally, they're with it. But when it comes time to actually the backbone of what's happening, how do you design your own application? What if I want to design an app? I want our technology.
I know you have several students who are designing an app.
We
right
do,
now.
but we don't really have somebody to. They're on their own. It really
Yeah.
is independent learning because
It's a blended
and
learning.
Kentucky
model.
is really so much of our technology classes are taught through business.
Yep.
Which really, if you just even say that out loud, makes no sense at
Is
all.
that Kentucky or is that nation?
Nationally?
Yeah.
A lot of the national standards.
Yeah.
Because they consider at the time technology was like Word and Excel
Word processing.
and those things we're teaching kids in elementary school now. And I
Yeah.
haven't seen across the state big changes in what they offer at high school.
Yeah.
Yes, we have some STEM Academy stuff where the kids are doing engineering, but that's still separate than a lot of the jobs that are out there for our high-end students in database programming, learning the different types of server-side languages like PHP and MySQL databases, and what you're actually going to use when you go out
Right.
and want to get a job. And so we have that population of students that we really need to give opportunities for. So I'm really searching for ways to do that.
Guys, we're in 2013. We're 12 years into 21st century. Can you believe that? And how long as educators?
We should start 21st century learning skills.
We should.
Start focusing.
We should start focusing on the 21st century
Soon,
learning
at
skills.
least by next year.
And so, it's a time now already, being 12 years into the 21st century, for us to already say, okay, 21st century, because you brought up keyboarding this time now.
Sure.
Is that really is that a 22nd century learning skill? Is that even a 21st century learning skill anymore? Is it time for us to redefine 21st century learning skills from what we've been talking about for the last 15, 20 years?
Well, we actually did, sort of.
Okay.
But we actually have identified 6 particular skills that we want kids to focus on, our teachers to focus on, but they actually have nothing to do with technology. Our 21st century skills, as we define them, don't have any technology in them at all. It's things like resilience, curiosity, creativity, teamwork, time management, ethics. Those things have nothing to do with a device.
And if you look at the 21st century
That's where I
skills
was
that are out
going.
there, the 21st century skills are all about those same types of
Communication,
things.
collaboration.
Engagement, collaboration. The problem is when you have this juxtaposition between 21st century learning skills and how we still assess students in the classroom,
That's right.
you're then living the teacher's nightmare, which
You're
is,
banging your-
I know that I want them to take this information and to work with it. I was a science teacher. I taught chemistry and physics. And to really teach that the right way, you let kids explore and to find the answer themselves. But when you look at how much content teachers have to cover and the pacing they have to go through and the assessment that they're still going to take, which doesn't test them that way. It doesn't necessarily test them on their creativity.
Right.
But we know that that's the skills you need to really make it in the job market.
Well,
so it'll be interesting to see how that,
And I think
is there a
that's
way
why-
to measure that in the students.
And I kind of laughed at earlier. I believe in absolutely 21st century skills. It's just that's the frustration point.
It is.
It doesn't match everything that we're trying to do, and so. But we all know that is absolutely like the skills that you mentioned. That absolutely you can't go wrong.
Well, it's just touchy because
Yeah.
I'm thinking of this collision that takes place.
It is a
right?
collision.
because
Yeah.
these when you read about what 21st century skills involve, it's a lot of the right things, and when you talk to policymakers, they use that buzzword, 21st century skills, and they were saying the right things. But at the same time, we have those that propose bills to mandate cursive handwriting and things like that. Which
that was last year, by the way.
Which honestly, I mean, it speaks to that clash, though, right? Yeah. Where, going back to that example, do I want to live in a world where our kids of tomorrow can't read cursive handwriting? And, honestly, that's a fair question.
See, I don't think it is a fair question.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think it's a fair question, but I don't think that I want to promote technology. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to, I'll leave it to somebody else to clean, because I think when we did the one-to-one, I had to answer a lot of public forum questions like this. Mm-hmm. What's wrong with doing a math problem on the chalkboard? Yeah. There's nothing wrong with doing a math problem on the chalkboard, but that's not where kids typically do everything else they do. And they're still just doing math, and they're just doing it in a different way. There's other ways that we can do this. There's nothing wrong with the way we do it. There's nothing wrong with cursive handwriting, except for the kids don't ever write.
Well, and I think
we're going to spend a whole lot of time doing that. We're going to spend a whole lot of time when the job market that they go into, they're going to be at keyboards, they're going to be at. So where do we want to spend the time that we have with our students? Because I've sat through a lot of those cursive writing. Those are the things that always come up at board meetings.
In the opposite, with these kids, they can't even use complete words when they text one another. Well, no, they don't. But they still understand one another, and they communicate with one another, and so...
Just as a side, I had that debate with my grandmother.
Okay.
And she's like, her point was, well, I was awesome shorthand, which is not complete words, right? She's like, what are people upset about?
Yeah.
I'm like, you're exactly right, Grandma.
I think it may be more of a generation thing. I remember I spoke to a group of people one time, and somebody was kind of debating what we were looking at thinking about doing, and they said, well, you'll always have to sign your taxes. I said, I haven't signed my taxes in like 7 years.
Taxes?
Well, we just hope we filed his taxes.
I have filed them. I haven't signed them.
I mean, there was somebody there when they quit using the quill that was upset about them not using the quill anymore. There was somebody there when they quit teaching calligraphy. There was somebody there who was upset. I mean, you can go on and on. The change is hard, but you look at what's going on in the job market the students have to go to. And we don't want to waste our students' time. They're our most valuable asset. When we have them in our hands, let's prepare them with the skills that they need to go out there and be successful. And if that's cursive handwriting, then let's spend our time doing cursive handwriting.
Do y'all still have chalkboards in Woodford County High School?
We have smart boards screwed into them. I just want to say.
Great.
Well, guys, we like to kind of wrap up here, and we asked this of our earlier panel. We're going to ask you two of the same questions to kind of wrap up. The James Lipton portion of our show, if you will. The question I asked for you is, in looking at the upcoming year, what is the biggest hurdle for you as an administrator and as a leader in technology integration? Jamie, you want to start off with that?
I think the biggest hurdle continues to be teacher development, in terms of getting professional development that works for teachers, getting them to focus when it's happening, and getting that not only just the buy-in, because they want to do these things, but they don't always know how.
That's a good point. And I think one thing that's, I don't know if it's a big challenge, but I think it's an opportunity, is that you are increasingly seeing more people give kids these opportunities. And maybe it's because it's another year using some of these technologies and realizing that it's not rocket science to create a quick video, and the kids can do it with what they're carrying in their pockets right now. So maybe I should give them a chance with that. And as that sort of philosophy slowly ekes its way into the environment, I think you're seeing more of these opportunities. That's why we're having these discussions, because you're seeing more people get excited about trying some different things, and it's just how do you fit it in, and how do they mesh that with the requirements that they have. I know that's something we talked about earlier.
I think for us, I mean, it's really trying to decide what the next thing is, what the next step for our district is. It's kind of like you get to that crossroads where we're pushing a lot of technology in. We brought a lot of change in a lot of districts over the past few years. Yeah. Most districts that are BYOD or one-to-one, that's happened recently, outside of maybe Daviess County. It's trying to decide, do I hold back and let's make what I already have in place work really well? Do I need to go in and spend more time with my teachers? I could use 10 TIS to actually get
integration specialists
to help our teachers take what they were already doing and make it more efficient for the students. And I think that's a big decision point for us. Do we go with virtual desktops? When you're in the kind of leadership position, you don't want to have egg on your face when you spend money.
Yep.
And like we've all just said, the funding is a big hurdle, and there's no room for error right now. And I've really encouraged people to be really creative with your funding.
a lot of times when people come in, like, how'd you do a one-to-one? Technology takes money. There are all those cost offsets that you have, but it takes money, and you've got to be the one going to the table with ideas.
Right.
Hey, could we do this with capital outlay money? Hey, could we use building when you're doing your facilities learning planning commission? Could we put this on there? Could we put wireless on our facilities plan? Like, what are you doing? Don't wait for people are never going to come to you with ideas. Like, your superintendent's not going to come to you and be like, I got an idea. We could actually use this pot of money to spend on your wiring infrastructure. You've got to be the one that takes those ideas to them.
Yeah, he makes a great point. Like every 4 years, every district updates their facilities plan, and so maybe if you don't already have full-blown wireless coverage everywhere, somebody should make that idea and make that a commitment. So if I believe in it, I'm gonna make it part of my facilities plan, just like I believe in we need to renovate a school after a certain number of years.
I believe in plumbing and electricity.
Right, but that's if you're in a district where you're not building a lot, we put smart boards on our facilities plan, we put wireless on our facilities plan. If you can screw in and you write it as a priority and you're not building anything else, you're going to, if you're a state-funded school, you're going to have funds available there for building. I think being creative and trying to get more money into your district because the money is an issue.
Yep. So rapid fire, we'll just come right back down the line here. What is, we got a lot of the vendor hall at KySTE 2013, by the way, vendor hall that we'll be going through. What's one of the things that you want to look into from one of the vendors? That could be it could be software, it could be hardware, it could be a technology that could be 3D printing. I don't know. What's one thing that you're?
I think I'm going to be looking at software services. I've noticed with the one-to-one that the teachers aren't asking for apps that much. What they really want are software services. Like we have subscriptions to Nearpod, we have a subscription to IXL Math Learning, and I kind of want to see what else is out there that might meet the needs of the students. We found that that's a better use of the student fee, is to have these subscriptions because the teachers use them. And they're not really asking for apps per se.
You don't have to worry about losing that app.
That's right. They want stuff where they can progress monitor their students. And
Get them
see
feedback.
changes. Yeah, that's exactly right. And of course we provide things like map testing, but there's a lot of stuff out there and it's almost impossible to keep up with there's some good software innovators that are producing new stuff and you don't have time to keep up with it.
That's right. Jody?
Well, I mean, as you know, we recently awarded some new state contracts for network services and voice services, and I think a lot of these sessions that you all have done with these discussions, it really points out the necessity of not only having the speeds and feeds and having link lights and having Wi-Fi signal, but making sure that it's rock solid and it's there and it has the capacity that it needs. So I intend to talk to some of these new contract award winners, and not just what products do you have, but what can you give our IT staff to give them confidence to manage the solution that they have, so that they don't get caught with egg on their face when the network decides to take a nosedive because of too much usage.
I'm kind of where Greg is. I want to see, my feeling is kind of the tool we need to have kids using is the internet. I don't really want to tie it to one device or one platform, one operating system. So I want to see what software is out there that I can subscribe to. Kids can use on any device in the school. Kids can use at home.
Ubiquitous access.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. So I want to see what I mean. I know what's out there. I know what I know, but I don't know what I don't know.
Nice.
Wait, what?
What just happened?
Yeah.
I think
My brain was blown.
Hey, we want to thank our second panel, EdTech Sandwich, live at KySTE 2013.
Marty, we did it.
We did it.
We did it.
Oh, dude, yeah. We didn't practice that one.
Hey, you know what? We didn't do it alone.
And we didn't.
We did not. I want to give a shout out to Rusty Sexton, who was running the TriCaster for both of our segments today, and Blake Drew running camera. And
Wait.
I also want to thank,
Absolutely.
thank our live studio audience.
Absolutely.
And thank all of you guys, Jamie, Jody, Greg, and Cougar Power.
I'm being interviewed by Joaquin Phoenix. I'm checking that off my bucket list.
And there you have it.
And there you
On
have
that
it.
note, we'll see you next episode.
EdTech Sandwich.